We are back in the Classic Motorsports Workshop. We are just finishing up our bug eye. Let me show you around a little bit and let's talk about what it takes to finish a restoration. You get to a certain point and you hopefully run out of extra parts laying on the table that you use to, put a car back together. At that point, you start making lists. We just basically run down notes, things that still need to be done. You have to think of these as systems. You go through systems. You've got your braking system, your clutch system, your hydraulics essentially there, your cooling system, your fuel system, and you have to basically go through each system. We were working on the fuel system yesterday and we had a problem with the original fuel tank, so I had to order a new fuel tank. From there, you've got to work through bleeding your clutch and then get through your brakes. You're going to have leaks. Nobody can ever put a car together and have no leaks in the brake line. So there will be leaks. You've got to find them, isolate them, and keep bleeding it to do that. We've been all the way through the wiring. We've checked everything. Again, we had a left light that was duller than the right light. Well, it turns out the two bulbs were obviously different wattages because we replaced the bulb and fixed that. You get bad connections, you wire stuff backwards. Again, it doesn't matter how good or how careful you are, you're always gonna have these sorting issues, and that's the phase we're at with this car. As we've said before, we take pictures as we're taking things apart and putting things together. But it seems like no matter how many pictures you take, and when you're in the heat of battle working on stuff, it's hard to remember to, grab the camera. You end up with 1,000 bolts and not 2 or 3, and then a photo. You end up with 1,000 bolts, and then you have to figure out what went where. But you've got to remain dedicated to taking pictures because you'll never get it apart. And we did use the pictures. I mean, we looked at stuff and said, okay, where did this go? We've got shop manuals and stuff, but sometimes just looking at the way it was is the best way to figure out how it should be, especially when it comes to, shop manuals don't tell you where to route a wire or where to route a line, especially when you get into the brake lines. That's a pain. And again, we've modified it. We've got this new dual braking system. To finish a car like this, I tell people that, I've had people come up to me and say, hey, I don't have any tools, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't have a garage space, and I don't have any money. Do you think I could restore a car? And the answer is no. You need a certain amount of these things, but what you need more than anything is the gumption to do it. If you can't spend 10 hours a week on a car, putting it back together, and you go, 10 hours a week is nothing. But other than sleeping and working, and maybe watching TV, what else do you do for 10 hours a week? Doesn't sound like much, but it is a big commitment, and you got to get out here. When you're tired, when it's raining, when it's hot, you got to get out here and keep on it, or you'll never get it back together. A mistake a lot of people make is not understanding what it is they're trying to do, or not really realizing what it is they're going to get. And we went into this project not trying to restore the car to stock for several reasons. A stock bug eye, it's a cool little car, but it isn't what we wanted. We wanted something that would perform like a modern car that looked like an old bug eye. But part of that decision is what we started with. We started with an X-race car. So everything had been stripped off, thrown away. We basically got a shell, a rolling shell. So don't try to restore a car, especially one like a bug eye that isn't intrinsically that valuable. I mean, if this was a Ferrari 250 GTO and it was a track car, we might have still restored it to stock unless there was some famous history. So, know what you're starting with and set yourself up for success, not failure. We didn't have the bumpers when we started. We didn't want the bumpers. So we kind of based the project on what it was we wanted and what it is we were starting with. And understanding and having a clear vision when you start is one way to success. And another way is to put that 10, 15 hours a week into it. It's usually always cheaper to buy a car that's done. Now, you buy a car that's done, is it the color you want? Is it prepped the way you want? Are you confident with the way it was built? These are the questions you have to weigh. We like doing this and we like our workmanship and we like the way stuff turns out when we do it, Plus it gives us something to write about, which is another caveat for this. But these are things to think about. So in general, you're gonna be further ahead if you buy something restored. The next thing you need to think about is a rolling or partial restoration versus you just take the damn thing apart and restore it. I've done both. There are certainly reasons to restore cars a little at a time, but sometimes, you know, especially on a car, this was a clapped out old race car, it was just easier, it's a simple car, just to strip the thing down, get the paint and bodywork squared away, and while that was happening, we were rebuilding the seats and we were rebuilding the engine and the rear end and all these different things while the bodywork was taking place. We didn't do that ourselves. We did some of it, but not all of that ourselves. And but that's the way I like to restore cars. But I understand the realities of that. When you take a car all apart, it doesn't add 20%. It somehow goes to 300% of the size it was. And you're like, how can that be? But try it. You'll end up with a whole shop full of Sprite crap. So think about that when you restore, but it is nice to just have a blank slate, get a perfect body, all finished, painted, and then start reassembling. It's a glorious process. It's filled with some frustration, but it's a cool thing. I'd recommend everybody do it once. I wouldn't recommend doing it 50 times like I have, because it wears your body out. So this is our Bug Eye Sprite project. You saw it when we started, or if you haven't, our videos are on the channel, or you can go to classicmotorsports.com. We've updated every step of the way what we've done to this car. As soon as we get it running, we'll take you for a ride. And if you like this sort of stuff, subscribe to our channel and please push that like button.